We are currently living through a very a very unique moment in history. Sociologists and historians might eventually classify this era as the golden age of access.
A golden age of access that comes with a very heavy irony attached to it.
That is the perfect way to frame it. Because if you take a step back and just observe the sheer volume of resources available for personal improvement, the landscape is staggering. We have access to mindset coaching, self-improvement books, neuroscience podcasts, high-performance routines. All of it is just a click away. Information is everywhere.
Frameworks are ubiquitous. By all logical metrics, we should be the most self-improved, emotionally intelligent, and productive generation to ever walk the earth.
But we are not. And that is the central paradox we are diving into for this deep dive.
It is a fascinating and, frankly, a somewhat disturbing paradox. We have the democratization of wisdom on a scale never seen before in human history.
You can wake up and listen to a neuroscientist explain dopamine regulation.
Then you read a Stoic philosopher on resilience before lunch.
And finish the day with a masterclass on negotiation.
Yet, when we look at the actual metrics of genuine transformation in people's lives, they remain surprisingly low. Real, sustained change is still incredibly rare.
We have the manuals, but we are not building the machine.
We are going to unpack a very specific argument today. The argument is that growth is not determined by access to knowledge. It is determined by identity and execution.
It is not about how much you learn. It is about how consistently you apply that learning. The gap between information and transformation is where most people get entirely lost.
To understand this gap, we need to look at a specific behavioral framework. This framework categorizes how people interact with personal development.
When individuals engage with growth, they typically fall into one of 4 unconscious archetypes. I should clarify that these are not fixed personality traits like introversion or extroversion.
They are behavioral tendencies, states we slip into.
Precisely. We call them the consumer, the intellectual, the chaotic executor, and finally, the consistent strategist. I want to dissect these 4 archetypes thoroughly today, because understanding them helps explain why we often feel stuck despite trying so incredibly hard.
Let us begin with the first one.
The consumer, which I suspect is the most common trap for anyone who loves learning.
The consumer is often described in the literature as the eternal student of possibility. This is the individual who genuinely wants to grow. Their desire is completely authentic.
You can see that desire in their behavior. They invest in the courses, they buy the best-selling books, they follow all the experts on social media, and attend the weekend workshops.
If you look at their digital life, their bookmarks folder is just overflowing with insightful content.
I'm sure many listeners can immediately recognize this pattern in themselves. You see a book that promises to solve a specific problem you have, you buy it, and you put it on the shelf.
The intention is clearly there, but the intention is accompanied by a subtle psychological trap. We have to look at the neuroscience of consumption here.
What happens in the brain when we buy that book or save that podcast?
When you purchase a course or save a piece of content, your brain releases dopamine. Dopamine is the neurotransmitter we associate with anticipation and reward.
It is the feeling of wanting something and getting it.
And the critical error the brain makes in this moment is that it interprets the mere acquisition of material as actual advancement.
So the brain rewards you for buying the running shoes, not for actually running the marathon.
That is the perfect analogy. You get the chemical reward before any implementation has occurred. The consumer confuses exposure with transformation.
They begin to view preparation as a comfort zone.
They convince themselves that clarity is just one more certification away, or one more morning routine away. They deeply believe that if they just find the perfect piece of information, everything will finally click into place.
It seems like a very insidious form of procrastination. It is disguised as productivity.
Yeah.
You feel like you're doing the hard work because you are constantly consuming content about the work.
We call it productive procrastination. The hard truth we must confront regarding the consumer is that learning is safe.
You could read a book about having difficult conversations in the complete safety of your living room.
Actually, having a difficult conversation is vulnerable. It carries real interpersonal risk. The consumer risks becoming addicted to the feeling of preparing for growth rather than the growth itself.
They build a massive library of solutions for problems they never actually step into the arena to tackle.
That distinction between safety and vulnerability is the hinge of the entire issue, which leads us directly into the second archetype.
The intellectual. This one is a bit more sophisticated, but I understand they are equally stuck. How does the intellectual differ from the consumer?
The consumer is often just skimming the surface, constantly looking for the magic pill or the quick hack. The intellectual, by contrast, actually masters the material.
They are not just buying the books, they are reading them, highlighting them, and absorbing the concepts.
They are the masters of theory. This individual understands the underlying mechanisms of habit formation. They can explain cognitive biases, intricate productivity systems, and the math of long-term compounding.
They know the advanced psychological models.
If you ask them a question about personal development, they can articulate the answer with incredible depth and clarity.
But they still suffer from a fundamental lack of results.
We call this the gap between cognition and embodiment. It is one of the most fascinating phenomena in all of behavioral science. You can literally have a PhD in exercise physiology and still be completely sedentary.
Because insight alone does not rewire identity.
Awareness without action creates a very dangerous illusion of progress. The intellectual feels a sense of superiority due to their vast knowledge. They know what to do, so their brain simply assumes they're the kind of person who actually does it.
And I have seen this happen so many times. People who can analyze exactly why they are procrastinating using perfect psychological terminology while they are actively in the middle of procrastinating.
It is a brilliant defense mechanism.
What is the root cause of this inaction for the intellectual? Is it just laziness?
It is rarely laziness. It is usually a very sophisticated form of ego protection. Analysis paralysis is the visible symptom, but the underlying cause is fear.
Fear of what?
Fear of failure and fear of invalidation. Think about it. If you never fully commit to action, you never actually risk failure. As long as you stay purely in the realm of theory, you remain perfect.
Thinking feels productive and safe. Acting exposes you to the harsh reality of your current limitations.
It is the underlying dread that if they try and fail, it fundamentally proves they are not as smart or capable as they think they are.
Growth requires friction. It requires the humility of being imperfect.
There is a profound difference between knowing the map and actually walking the terrain. The intellectual values studying the map over experiencing the journey. We must realize that knowledge is merely potential energy.
It just sits there waiting to be used.
Action is the only thing that converts that potential energy into actual momentum. Without that conversion, the energy eventually just dissipates.
That brings us to the third archetype. This one seems like the complete polar opposite of the first two. This person clearly has no problem with taking action.
We call this one the chaotic executor.
The chaotic executor breaks the pattern of passivity entirely.
This profile is characterized by massive, relentless action. They are incredibly high energy. They wake up at 5 in the morning. They launch new projects every week. They commit to extreme dietary overhauls, and they move incredibly fast.
If you look at them from the outside, their ambition is highly visible. They seem to be the ones out there making it happen.
But the name we give them implies a very specific flaw, chaotic. It suggests that all this motion is not necessarily leading anywhere productive.
The flaw is a lack of architecture.
Their execution is fueled almost entirely by bursts of motivation rather than structured systems of discipline. They rely on massive emotional surges to get things done.
You see a cycle of fragmentation with them. 1 month, they are fully immersed in a new fitness regime.
The next month, they pivot entirely to a new entrepreneurship venture.
And the month after that, they drop the business and are deep into 10-day meditation retreats.
It is the classic shiny object syndrome, but manifested in high-effort bursts. They start a dozen holes in the ground but never dig deep enough to actually hit water.
The journey is intense, but it is deeply fragmented. They mistake intensity for consistency.
That is a critical distinction in behavioral science. Sustainable growth is rarely explosive. It is repetitive. It is structured. It compounds quietly in the background. The chaotic executor is addicted to the start of a project.
Because the start is where the motivation and the novelty are at their absolute highest.
I imagine this leads to significant burnout. You simply cannot run at maximum intensity in random scattered directions forever.
Burnout is almost the inevitable outcome for this particular profile.
It is not because they lack drive. Clearly, they have plenty of drive and energy. It is because they lack design. Energy without direction eventually exhausts itself.
Without a strategy, all that action is essentially just noise.
And as we know in signal processing, noise does not create a signal. It just creates confusion. The chaotic executor ends up exhausted and confused about why their massive effort has not yielded any massive, tangible results.
We have covered the trap of preparation with the consumer. We have explored the trap of theory with the intellectual. And we have outlined the trap of unstructured intensity with the chaotic executor.
This logically leads us to the fourth archetype, the one that is presented as the actual solution.
The consistent strategist.
The consistent strategist is the rarest archetype of the four, but it is undeniably the most effective. This individual operates on a completely different core philosophy.
They prioritize alignment over excitement.
They do not chase every single opportunity that comes along, nor do they consume information endlessly without a specific purpose in mind.
What does their approach actually look like in practice? How do they avoid the psychological traps the other three fall into?
They build systems. While the chaotic executor looks only at what they can achieve today, the strategist measures progress in months and years.
They understand that delayed gratification is not a sacrifice.
It is a form of leverage. They are absolutely willing to do the unglamorous, repetitive work today for a compounded, massive result later.
It sounds like they have made complete peace with boredom.
That is a profound insight. Their routines often look incredibly boring from the outside looking in. They're doing the exact same things at the exact same times repeatedly.
But they are actively utilizing principles of behavioral economics and habit science.
They know that motivation is completely fickle, so they do not rely on it at all. Instead, they design their environments to do the heavy lifting for them.
They reduce friction for their good habits and intentionally increase friction for their bad ones.
They create clear, trackable feedback loops to keep themselves on the desired path.
So instead of trying to force themselves to work hard through sheer brute force willpower, they design a life where working hard is simply the path of least resistance.
While the other archetypes are constantly chasing intensity or seeking endless clarity, the strategist is quietly building inevitability.
They structure their daily life so that growth becomes the inevitable mathematical outcome of their design.
In the long run, inevitability is infinitely stronger than motivation.
I want to pivot slightly here to the broader concept of identity. We have defined these four archetypes, but human beings are not static creatures. Can someone move between these different states?
It is vital to clarify for everyone listening that these are fluid states, not permanent, fixed identities.
Most of us have probably embodied the consumer, the intellectual, and the chaotic executor at different points in our lives.
You might be a classic consumer in your approach to physical health, but function as a chaotic executor in your business endeavors. These categories are highly fluid depending on the domain of life.
How does one actively shift from the first three less effective states into becoming a consistent strategist?
The mechanism of change really accelerates when awareness meets adjustment. You first have to ruthlessly identify which trap you are currently falling into.
Once you see the pattern clearly, you can begin to disrupt it.
Redefining your entire approach to personal development is key here. It is not about finding the perfect method or uncovering some hidden secret to success.
It is about aligning your daily behavior with your long-term intention and doing so repeatedly until your actual identity shifts to match it.
It reminds me of the classic idea that you simply become what you repeatedly do. If you only consume, your identity becomes that of a consumer.
If you execute sporadically, your identity becomes chaotic.
We can summarize the various traps beautifully this way. Knowledge without execution merely decorates the mind. Action without direction completely exhausts the body. But consistency paired with strategy fundamentally transforms the person.
We live in a world that is completely obsessed with speed, rapid hacks, and constant stimulation.
In that modern context, disciplined patience is genuinely the most radical move you can make.
That is a very powerful reframing. We often think of radical acts as these big, loud, disruptive gestures. But here, the radical act is just being boring, consistent, and remarkably patient.
Growth often looks extremely boring before it ever looks extraordinary. We see the extraordinary end result out in the world. The fit body, the wildly successful business, the profoundly calm mind.
And we mistakenly assume the process to get there must have been equally exciting and dramatic.
But the actual process is built in quiet, structured mornings, controlled daily impulses, and doing the necessary reps even when you absolutely do not feel like it.
It brings us all the way back to the start of our conversation. We have all this unprecedented access, but access does not magically do the work for us. The individual still has to do the work.
The information is nothing more than a tool. The archetype you currently embody determines exactly how you use that tool. You can use a hammer to meticulously build a house, or you can just collect hundreds of hammers.
The consistent strategist builds the house.
As we wrap up this deep dive, I want to challenge everyone listening to seriously reflect on this framework. Which archetype truly defines your behavior today?
Not your grand intentions, but your actual observable behavior over the last 30 days.
That is the critical distinction we all have to make. We constantly judge ourselves by our noble intentions, but reality judges us strictly by our actions.
If you find yourself holding a library of unread books and saved podcasts, recognize the consumer.
If you find yourself flawlessly critiquing methods you have never actually tried to implement, recognize the intellectual.
If you are totally burned out from starting 10 different things at once this month, recognize the chaotic executor.
And the ultimate goal is to gently but firmly move toward that strategist mindset, building the quiet systems, accepting the daily boredom, and trusting the mathematics of the compound effect.
It comes down to a final challenge for our own self-perception. We place so much cultural emphasis on learning, on gathering more and more dots of information.
But in the end, growth is not about what you learn, it is about what you repeat.
That is the provocative thought we will leave you to explore on your own. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the mechanics of transformation. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Deep Thoughts Podcast. I hope you found insights and inspiration to take with you on your journey of self-growth. If you enjoyed the show, be sure to hit the subscribe button so you never miss an episode. And don't forget to follow us on social media to stay updated on new releases and exclusive content. See you next time, where we'll continue to help you grow and explore your full potential.